Hey, welcome to the Tales of a Gearhead podcast. This is brought to you by Cornwell Tools. They're the choice of professionals since 1919. Yeah, 1919. A little bit of quick math work. That's over 100 years of building top quality tools. I'm your host, Stacey David. All right, let's turn the key and get rolling. Okay, this question comes from Cara. She says, hey, I'm hoping for some advice on a personal truck project that I want to take on. She says, I have a 2008 Chevy Xtra Cab 4x4, which has rusted out rear wheel wells, as well as the entire rocker panel on each side of the truck. It's a Southern truck, Arkansas, and I assume that it's just from bad neglect of cleaning. Well, you never know. Sometimes it's just, the trucks weren't treated well from the factory. She says, I have never welded body panels on before. I'm not sure I need to try welding in new quarters or cab rockers. She says, I'm considering either Bondo or fiberglass. Both, she says, I'm familiar with using, are either a worthwhile idea. What do you think? What is your advice for my baby? Well, I'll tell you what, Cara. You haven't really told me what your plan is for this truck. If this is a daily driver, if it's a toy, if it's something, if it's a mud truck, because those will all depend on this. But my first answer is always metal. If you want to fix it right, you got to do metal. I have to give you definitely kudos for recognizing that it might be beyond your skill level at this point to weld in new quarters and rockers. That's the way to fix it properly. Now, here's what you're probably going to run into. It's probably not just the quarters and not just the rockers that are rusty. Usually, that's the outer thing you see, but the inner supports are probably gone. All the way up, your floor is probably getting rotten. If your rockers have gotten bad, then there's a good chance that the leading edge of the floors are bad that connect to the rockers. Up in those rear quarter panels, you can find all kinds of mess up there. So if you're not a body person and if you haven't welded those panels in like you say, that needs to go to somebody at a body shop. And before they touch that truck, they need to crawl up under there and they need to give you a good assessment of how much metal is going to have to be replaced, because this could get really expensive for you, especially if you go to a body guy that's going to rack you, for a bunch of labor on something. So, and some of it could be warranted. So at that point, like I said, that could get real expensive. Now, if you're just going to use this as a beater and you just want to make the panels just close up the holes, obviously I wouldn't use Bondo at all. Let's not call it Bondo because Bondo is just a brand name. Just any plastic filler. They've got the one with the kitty hair and all that stuff, which help, but there's still a filler. So if you want strength and you don't want to do metal, obviously fiberglass is the way to go. Get some good fiberglass mat and resin and do the fiberglass in there. But this is just for, a jump truck or something that's a mud truck. It is not a proper repair on a rusted out piece of metal. So, if you're going to go that route, do the fiberglass. This brings up another thing that I know this is your baby and it's very personal to you. I can tell by the way you write about it. But if you get up under that thing and there's a lot of rust, I would suggest selling the truck and getting another one. If you're looking at thousands of dollars for rust repair, it's not worth it. You can find another truck that's not rusted out. And then turn that one into a toy. Turn it into a mud truck or a jump truck or whatever. And see, that's another option. You can find another bed. Gosh, sometimes you can find those beds, a replacement bed for $1,000 or less. Man, that's a cheap way to go. Doesn't fix your rocker panel problem, but it can take care of the bed issue. So anyway, you got some things to think about there, Cara. Good luck. Send some pictures in. Let's see what you come up with. When the subject of tools comes up in the shop, people will all talk about their sockets and their wrenches, but then we start to get into the subject of exotic tools. These are your body working tools, and these are your flangers and all these special tools. And people are like, where do you get those? Because you're not going to find those at Home Depot, and you're not going to find them at the local hardware store. And that is where Cornwell comes in. They have a catalog that's like the old phone books. You remember the phone books? Well, that's a Cornwell catalog. And these guys will bring the tools right to you. Once you start to get into that world, and once you start to see what's out there, you'll be like, what have I been doing messing around with the stuff that I find locally? One of the cool things about a company like Cornwell is that they do have warranties, and they have guys right on the trucks that can really talk to you about the tools and steer you in the right direction. So if you're really into your projects and you're into doing things right with good tools, check out Cornwell. So I was watching TV last night, happened to click onto the History Channel, and they've got this series that they've been doing for a long time. It's the men that built America, it's the food that built America, it's the cars that built America. It's a whole series that is really good that the History Channel's locked into. I've been fortunate enough to be involved in a couple of the shows, talking about trucks and muscle cars and that kind of thing. Anyway, the one that was on last night was the toys that built America, and it was the Hot Wheels versus Matchbox deal. Well, this is this is right down my childhood now, because man, when I was growing up, Hot Wheels were king. You know, I was right at that age when Hot Wheels came out. I was a bit on the young side, but about 1970, 71, boy, you know, that was when we were into them. But I remember the first Hot Wheel that I got. My dad got it for me. And nobody knew what a Hot Wheel was. And he came in, and it was a purple custom AMX. Now, I didn't know what an AMX was. You know, at that point, I was always playing with cars, and I had a lot of Matchboxes. And the Matchboxes at the time were always like wreckers and bulldozers and that kind of thing. And those were great. Those were fun to play with. But this purple AMX with the hood opened was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. That was my first Hot Wheel. I've always loved AMXs because of that. Then you started going to school and you started seeing these, you know, crazy things like the split image and the silhouette and, you know, all these dual engine crazy things and the Red Baron, all of that, man. It was car nirvana to a young kid. See, at first you just got the cars. Then you discovered there was track. Well, our whole neighborhood was Hot Wheels crazy, all the boys. And so we would literally have Hot Wheels races through our whole neighborhood. Nobody was more serious about it than I was. My brothers had some of them, and my younger brother always had the Red Baron, and my older brother always had, you know, junkers. He was always pulling the wheels off, doing crazy stuff. But mine, I had the ones I played with, which were, you know, big and heavy, or the Matchbox stuff. But then I had my Hot Wheels that you never touched. Those were my racing cars. And you didn't bend the wheels, you didn't touch them. I mean, everything was perfect on them. You know, I wanted to have the fastest cars in the neighborhood. Now, we didn't have a lot of cars. You know, my parents didn't have a lot of money, so you had one or two Hot Wheels. We had to be real selective. When we'd go to the store, Mom would say, you know, okay, you can have one car. And we're like, oh man, just one? So you had to pick the right one. Because you take it home, and if it was slow, it's like, oh, crap. The Hot Wheels races were a big deal, and I had some fast cars. One of the things that was unique about Hot Wheels is that they didn't just go straight. They had that loop. So our races were, you know, you had to go off the countertop. There was a certain height that you had to go, and then it had to go through a loop, and then, you know, you'd have your winner at the end. We didn't do the jump or anything because you always ran off the track with that. You know, it was fun, but you didn't want to do that. It'd mess up your car too. But the loop was mandatory. So immediately that eliminated a lot of the heavier cars. You know, I had some, they didn't do the loop well, and so they'd get beat by the lighter cars. Now, keep in mind, about this time, Hot Wheels came out with a Saturday morning cartoon called Hot Wheels. Basically, it was a 30-minute commercial for their product. And it was only out a couple years, I guess. But man, we were glued to the TV on Saturday morning watching the Hot Wheels thing. Because then we'd go race our cars. And I still remember the hero guy. He was kind of a speed racer kind of guy. And he drove a car that looked a lot like the speed racer car. His name was Jack Wheeler. You guys remember that? And his car was the Jackrabbit Special. And he raced this car all the time. Of course, nothing beat the Jackrabbit Special. His buddy Tank, I think his name was, drove the Woody, the 32 Woody or whatever it was. And his girlfriend drove the Sand Crab dune buggy. And then the villain, you know, drove the Demon, which was, you know, the little coffin car. Man, I remember this from when I was 6 years old. It was that big of a deal. So anyway, we're up there racing, and it's all the boys in the neighborhood, and my sister comes walking in. My sister was older, 4 years older, so, she comes walking in. She goes, well, can I play? And we're like, you're a girl, go away. That was that time when, it's like you had the boys that play and the girls, oh, no, fleas and all that stuff, especially your sister. It's like, go away, you can't play. You don't have a car. So she goes out and she gets herself a Hot Wheel. And she buys the sand crab because she likes it. And it's green. Well, we're laughing because keep in mind what I told you about the cartoon. The girl drove the sand crab. So in a young boy's mind, that's a girl's car. So it's not fast. It's a girl's car. In the mind of a 6-year-old. And we all have our ones called the whipped creamer and all these crazy things. And my dad used to officiate all of the Hot Wheels races. So he'd be up there laughing and having fun with this. Well, my sister comes in. She wants to be part. And, so she comes in and she sets the sand crab up against the cars and just walks us. I mean, she's beaten us by 2 feet. It was short wheelbase. And it was light, and it was just balanced just right. Man, it would go through that loop so fast, it would almost lift the loop off the ground. Okay, so she's beating my fast cars. So, I'm pulling out my big guns. I'm pulling out the ones, my prized possessions. And that crazy sand crab is beating them all. Okay, so now she walks away the champ. Okay, this is really hard for a 6-year-old kid to handle this. Not only has she beat all my cars, but she beat it with a girl's car. So I'm like, what the heck? So anyway, immediately I go into wheeler and dealer mode. So I'm going to trade her for that sand crab. So I'm offering her all my cars. She's like, why would I want those? I already beat them. Oh, this is like, it's killing me as a kid. Of course, my other brothers, they don't care, but I do. And I know in my kid's mind that if I can get the Jackrabbit Special Excalibur, nothing can beat that. Because obviously on the cartoon, nothing beats it. And nobody in the neighborhood had the Jackrabbit Special. Nobody had even seen one. We knew they existed, but nobody had one. Nobody at school had one. And everybody talked about it almost in low whispers, like, oh, Jackrabbit Special. Jackrabbit Special. Did you see one? I think I saw one down at Montgomery Ward's or something. They had one, but it was gone. That's the kind of thing that's going on at recess at school. So anyway, time goes by, and I'm down at the store with my mom, and I think the store was Newberry's. And we walk in there. Of course, I run to the Hot Wheels aisle, and right there in front, there's a Jackrabbit Special, white. It's the car. I was speechless. There it is. It's Excalibur, the sword in the stone. It's it. And all I can think of was like, oh. First of all, I got to convince Mom that I got to have this car. And then I'm thinking, oh, man, do I have something to show a sister? So anyway, I beg it, and I'm pleading, Mom, oh, please, can I have the Jackrabbit Special? I'll do anything. I'll mop the floors. I'll clean the bathrooms. I'll do whatever. I'll be slave labor forever. And my mom, she obviously could see it was a big deal to me. And I think she had been kind of following, Dad had been kind of filling her in on the races. So I get the Jackrabbit Special. Okay. I'm coming home, and I've got it. It's out of the package, and I'm rolling it on the floor, and the wheels are perfect, and this thing is perfect. So I can't wait. I set up the track, and in my child mind, I didn't realize the dynamics and the physics of what happened with the loop. Now, keep in mind, the Jackrabbit Special is about the same wheelbase as the sand crab. It's kind of short. It's almost, when you look at the two together now, they're very similar chassis. Very similar in weight. They're going to run pretty much about the same. I wasn't looking at any of that. I'm just looking at, I've got the Jackrabbit Special. It's over for everybody else in the neighborhood. So I get out there and I set up the track, and in my haste, I don't put the loop in. I just do a straight track because it's like, this thing's going to be so fast. It's going to go through the wall on the other side. I'm putting pillows against the wall so it doesn't hit the wall and break the foundation of the house. It's going to be so fast. So I roll it down the track, and I roll it next to some of my other cars, my fast cars. And, of course, they're heavier. So they're beating it. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. These cars are beating the Jackrabbit Special. How is that possible? And I don't realize the fact I haven't, put a loop in or anything, and the weight. I don't understand all this kind of stuff. But what I do understand is that the cars that have now been beaten by my sister and the Sand Crab are beating my Jackrabbit Special. Okay, so now in my kid brain, I'm like, okay, this is not going to be good because sister is going to beat me with the Sand Crab. I remember that my sister is a trader. So I'm like, okay. So I wait for sister to get home, and I walk in with the Jackrabbit Special. Now, she knew the Jackrabbit Special because she watched the cartoon. So she's like, hey, I'll trade you the Sand Crab for the Jackrabbit Special, which is exactly what I wanted. So I'm like, well, I don't know. So I get another couple of things in the deal, but I get the Sand Crab. And I've traded off Excalibur. I've traded off the car that I've been after for 2 years. Or it seemed like 2 years. It might have been 2 weeks, but it seemed like forever. I've traded off the hero car, the one from the cartoon and everything, because I got to have the fastest car. So I got the Sand Crab. And I'm doing all this math in my own head. So I've got the Sand Crab, and it's this big deal. And my dad's watching this go on. He's laughing. Okay, so later in the day, we set up the track. And we're going to have the races. And everybody's out there, and it's the big deal. And I'm sitting here and I'm kind of thinking to myself, I got this figured out. I'm going to beat sister's, Jackrabbit Special with the Sand Crab, which was, is a girl's car, which is okay now because it's going to be fast. Okay, so we set up the track. Keep in mind, the dual loops go in, everything's going, everybody's racing, this kind of deal. Well, it comes up to the big race. And we line up the Sand Crab and the Jackrabbit Special together, and off they go down the track. And the Jackrabbit Special walks the Sand Crab by about 6 inches. And I can't believe it. And I'm like, so the Jackrabbit Special actually was faster than the Sand Crab, but now I don't own it. I have traded off the car that I wanted, which turned out to be the fastest car on that particular day, and I am left with the Sand Crab, the girl's car. Oh, and my sister walked it right into her bedroom, and she would set it up on her mantelpiece, so when you looked in her bedroom, you could see it up there, and then that was it. She wasn't going to trade that car for anything. Oh, it was a big lesson to me. Oh, it was devastating for at least 20 minutes until I went on to something else. But eventually, I did trade her out of the Jackrabbit Special and the Sand Crab, and then a year later, they didn't matter. But at this point, I do have a really nice Jackrabbit Special and a really nice Sand Crab in my collection. And it reminds me of that. And still, we'll get together at Christmas or something, and we'll get to laughing about that. And my dad, he laughs so hard, he starts crying because he saw it all happen. And man, when my sister beat me with a Jackrabbit Special, that was it. He said you were so dejected. So anyway, that's some of my Hot Wheels stories. I am sure you guys have something like that. I'd love to hear them. I tell you what, we were just out doing a story on Tom Daniel, the legendary designer that did all those fantastic models for Monogram. He did, the Bad Medicine. He did the Bad Man. He did the Red Baron. He did the Ice-T. He did the Paddy Wagon. All of these legendary vehicles. But one of the cars he designed was the Sand Crab. So I was telling him that story. He had one sitting there. As we were talking about that, Tom is a designer. He never built any of the cars. Most of those cars didn't exist. And I said, there's a couple of your cars, Tom, that I would like to build in real life. And the Sand Crab is one of them. And I'd like to do it and give it to my sister. I think she'd love it. Anyway, fill us in on some of your Hot Wheels stories, man. I'd love to hear them. That would be great. All right, that's it for today. Once again, we're brought to you by Cornwell Tools. Have a great day and get out there and work on something.